Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have an early impression video on a fragrance from the house of Thomas DeMonaco. Now, this is a house that does not get a lot of talk on my channel, mostly because I don't own any from the brand. They've only released a handful of fragrances. They're a newer house, so to speak, but it's definitely a house to put on your radar. You know, with so many niche houses and designer houses and artisanal houses that are floating around out there, I read something that absolutely blew me away the other day. I think Rich Mitch sent it to me, and it said there were over 6,000 fragrance releases in 2024. Think about that. I could do a video a day, and I wouldn't even make a dent. You know, when I say it's impossible to keep up with everything that's coming out, it's literally impossible. So that's why, you know, I was hoping when I started this channel that my channel would be a little bit of an encyclopedia, you know, of fragrances we can go and see my thoughts. But very quickly did I realize how impossible that was. And it's kind of turning into one of those things where I really have to learn to prioritize my time. But also, I was thinking about this the other day too. Prioritize where you invest your money in your collection. Obviously, I already have a huge collection. I could never add another bottle for the rest of my life, and I would have more than enough than I could ever use in multiple lifetimes, right? But I recently finished a decant of, this is Benny Havane by Les Indemodables, and this was a 10 ml decant. I got it when it came out, so 3-ish years ago or so, 3-4 years ago. And whenever the release date was, I forget when Benny Havane came out. But I had this 10 ml in my collection, let's say at least 3 years. And I just finished it. And sometimes when you have a big collection, you don't need full bottles. 10 mils lasted me 3 years because I'll wear it, then I'll wear something else, and I'll come back to it, you know. And I don't usually wear stuff back to back to back. I like to kind of jump around and wear different things in the collection. So it really got me thinking, you know, about where you prioritize your time and stuff like that. It's a very interesting thought process when you're sort of a collector, if you will. But 6,000 plus new releases in 2024. My guess is as the years go on, that's only going to increase. As AI becomes a part of it, fragrances are easier to pump out, new stuff gets discontinued, or old stuff gets discontinued, you know, that isn't selling, and these houses just put out something new because they want that new label where people run out and go buy the new thing. So what's interesting about the house of Thomas DeMonaco, though, to get off my soapbox there, I just found that was very fascinating. I thought I'd share it with you guys, is that it's very much like the house of Roberto Greco. So you guys who follow the channel are familiar that Roberto Greco was a photographer in the fragrance industry for many, many years. And Thomas DeMonaco is very similar. He was a photographer who worked with many of these sort of, you know, designer-like brands. And he decided, after many years of working with some of these big name brands, to launch his own brand, Thomas DeMonaco. And so he decided to launch his own brand, and very much like Roberto Greco, the very first fragrance that he put out became kind of like a big hit, you know. With Roberto Greco, it was Roc, which I reviewed on the channel. I know I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but close enough as I'm going to get as a Texan. I reviewed that just a few months ago. One of the fragrances of 2023 for me. There was Desandras in 2023, came out early in 2023, and then Roc by Roberto Greco. Those are two of my favorites from 2023. I just reviewed Roc a couple months ago on the channel. And very similar, when the house of Thomas DeMonaco came out, they put out a fragrance called Raw Gold, and it became like a little bit of a sort of insider smash hit. You know, there was a limited amount of bottles. I think they were individually numbered and stuff like that. And it became a little bit of a hit inside of Fragcom. I reviewed it on the channel. I really, really enjoyed it. And I will tell you that this one is very nice. I like it. But it has some pros and cons that we're going to discuss. So today we're going to talk about a fragrance called Eau Coeur, which is right... Oops, where is it? Here it is. Eau Coeur. And it seems like all of their stuff says limited edition. I don't know. It says this is still in production. Matt sent this to me, so thank you, Matt. And this is a very interesting little sample they send you because it's a roller ball. So I've been kind of rolling this on. I got a chance to test this a couple nights in a row. So this is the third night that I have got a chance to test this, and I'm just going to roll on some new fragrance here because why not? I've got the dry down here. By the way, before I go any further, it is going to snow tonight here in Texas, or early tomorrow morning, let's say. And my scent of the day today when I went to work, dressed sort of professional, is Aigner Silver. My God. I mean, I'm going to say some good things about Eau Coeur, but it doesn't hold a candle to my scent of the day. And I've reviewed this on the channel as well. My heart is just with these vintage fragrances. Even the expensive niche stuff like this just cannot hold a candle to these old fragrances from the past. My personal opinion. Just one Ram's opinion here. So again, I reviewed a hype beast from this brand, Thomas de Monaco, called Raw Gold. And I really like the way that the patchouli and this very sticky, sort of strange leather aspect came through. But surprise, surprise, I thought it was just a little bit too sweet. If I could tone the sweetness down, actually, if I could tone the sweetness down on both of these, it would be a good thing. But the way that they have incorporated that sweetness into the composition makes it bearable for me. It's something I definitely notice. There are some sweet fragrances where I'm like, nope, nope, hell no, no way, not a chance in hell, right? With Thomas de Monaco, they are sweet. They have some modern aspects to them, but the blends are done in a way where they're competently perfumed. You know, the composition is professional enough where even someone who's going to kind of take time to peel back the layers like an onion will be able to appreciate it, even though there is a little bit of sweetness there. That's the very first thing. The problem with Raw Gold was I was like, man, you know, I would just wear my vintage Givenchy Gentleman from 1974 and be just as happy. You know, there's no reason for me to go run out and get a bottle of Raw Gold, although it did really grow on me, and I really like some of the aspects, the leather, the lipstick quality that was in there, all of that stuff with that patchouli, honeyed like patchouli. I enjoyed it. So I put a pin in the brand, and now we're kind of circling back to them. This came in one of the most recent sort of sample hauls that Matt sent me very kindly. And, you know, it's a brand that I understand as a new niche brand, you kind of have to juggle all of these different things. You have to juggle trying to get new people to come check out your brand and what's popular and try to get hyped and all of this stuff, right? So I made a note of the fact that they did a really good job of juggling this sort of modern sweetness with that vintage appeal that they had in Raw Gold. So when this fell in my lap, I was very curious what they were going to do with Eau Coeur. So apparently Eau Coeur came out in 2022. And as I said, I've been wearing it for 3 nights in a row now. This is the 3rd night I've had a chance to test it. And it has this strange modernity to it that I kind of like. There are some parts that I like and some parts that I don't like. Let me read you the blurb and tell you about the perfumer. The perfumer is a guy named Maurus Bachmann. Great name. And here's kind of how the sample came. Apparently it came like this somehow. And you can see they're obsessed with gold. And here, let me read you the little blurb. There's the note listing right there. So it says, Eau Coeur opens with an intriguing alliance of mysterious magnolia oil, the woody peach scent of Osmanthus Absolute with its feral and leather notes, and an inflection of invigorating pink pepper. The heart note exudes a hint of rose Maroc Absolute, Moroccan rose, emboldened with Virginia cedarwood as well as smoky oak wood, the tart vanilla undertones of which also linger in the base note, where this sensual impact is all the more powerful in the company of tonka bean absolute, tender musks, I don't know about tender, invokes passion all topped off with an overindulgence of ambroxan. They're right about that, which lends the perfume its harmonious union and longevity. Okay, so it is an extrait. I'm not sure what these go for. I guess I should have looked that up beforehand. Let's see. Thomas de Monaco Eau Coeur. It is on Lucky Scent for $295 for 50 ml. Okay, so it is a little bit pricey. It definitely is a little bit pricey. So Eau Coeur, again, but it is an extrait, but $295 for 50 ml. Unfortunately, that is kind of par for the course nowadays. I hate to say that, but that's just the way perfume prices are going. So let me see if I can try to walk you through the fragrance and how it changes on my skin. So this opens up with sweetness, as I said. It opens up sweet and with some spiciness, but compared to something like Raw Gold, if you're going to try to wrap your head around this and you've never smelled it before, you have to understand that you will notice that this is a much more open and vast fragrance. It's nowhere near as condensed and heavy and thick and syrupy. Nowhere near that, okay? If Raw Gold is a winter fragrance, Eau Coeur is probably more spring, summer, early fall, okay, is how I would categorize this. It's nowhere near as dense and thick, and it just doesn't fill as much space, you know? It doesn't feel anywhere near as heavy, in my opinion. Although, I wouldn't call this a light fragrance by any stretch of the imagination, because there are a few notes in here that make this last a really long time, especially for a floral, fresher type scent, okay? And it is very floral heavy, I will say that. So it starts off with basically this twist of floral. So Eau Coeur opens up with this floral triple threat of Magnolia, Osmanthus Absolute, and Moroccan Rose Absolute, and some pink pepper. Now, pink pepper, usually when I think of pink pepper, instantly the first thing I think of is like this designer-like note, okay? This note that makes it more mass appealing, more likable. The majority of people like that pink pepper note. Here, the pink pepper is actually not as tame as you might imagine it to be, okay? Usually, like I say, it gives off that designer vibe. Here, excuse me, there's a little extra oomph, okay, to the pink pepper, the way the pink pepper hits in here. And it sort of completes and also competes a little bit in the top, but pretty soon the flowers start to kind of overtake it with this very creamy floral concoction, okay? It has this little dustings of powder on top. So these little dustings of powder with the florals kind of begin pushing their way through. And other than just toning down the sweetness, which I would say if you said, Ramsey, you're going to be the creative director on Thomas DeMonico fragrance, the very first thing I would do is I would tone down the sweetness on both Raw Gold and this, and then I would buy full bottles of them because they're very, very interesting. It's just that modern sweetness gets to me. I can still appreciate the fragrances, but it's there right from the beginning. So I would tone down the sweetness, but there are things that I like and things that I don't like about the fragrance that jump out to me from the very beginning. And one of the reasons, usually with these early impressions, and I have samples everywhere, like if you could see over here, and over here, and over here, I mean, up here, I am covered. I probably have 1,000 samples waiting to be discussed. So it's impossible, again, to get through it all. It's just impossible. But the reason I took 3 days instead of my usual 2, usually I'll only wear something now a couple days and try to get a video out because there's so much more behind that I want to discuss with you guys. But I was hemming and hawing about how to describe Eau Coeur to you guys, okay? Because in the opening, I kept thinking about waves. But it's not an aquatic. I don't want you to think about aquatic at all, but I want you to think about sort of the peak and the arc of the wave going up and down, you know? But not like a beach, not like aquatic water or anything like that. But imagine something like it's coming at you in waves, okay? So imagine like something is coming at your nose and you can almost feel it in the air, this vibration of waves, okay? And then it hit me, okay? So again, don't think beach, don't think aquatic, but have you ever seen those crazy folks who can literally play a saw? Like one of those hand saws that the metal is kind of wavery? There are folks who can actually play it like a musical instrument. Look it up on YouTube. It's the craziest fucking thing you'll ever see, okay? But it almost gives off this vibrating like quality. It's almost like a wavery sound. It's almost like a watery sound, but it doesn't smell aquatic, if that makes sense. So it almost like makes your eyes water. That's how the fragrance seems to come at me, even from the very beginning, okay? It doesn't have this strange sort of like metallic quality of something like Ganymede, which I also reviewed on the channel. It doesn't have that space-aged, you know, outer planet Ganymede thing that's going on, like you somehow, you know, like ripped off a sort of, like one of those caps on like a aluminum can, the little tab, and put it under your tongue or something. You ever did that as a kid and you get that like metallic sort of hit? It doesn't have that, but if you can imagine, the saw I'm describing is made out of some sort of flexible metal, right? And so maybe there's like a metallic byproduct here without it actually being metallic. And it makes the sound, imagine like the sound of a wah pedal, you know, on a guitar, the wah, 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 right? There's almost like this metallic sort of coming at you in waves without really being uber metallic, if that makes sense. It's leaning metallic, but it's not super metallic. And when you combine that with the slightly fresh floral opening, remember, there's a lot of spice in between the notes, and the florals add sort of this like airiness about them to the scent, okay? With that sweetness kind of put on, that modernity, that sweet modernness sort of put on top, like a cherry on top. And probably what's happening is like little hints of this nutty, like tonka and vanilla are like sliding their way upward through the note pyramid. And it doesn't smell like frosted cake or anything like that, or frosted cupcakes or anything like that, you know, but it does have this hint of sweetness. It's almost like if you could imagine a vanilla unsweetened in a way. Imagine like an unsweetened vanilla. It's clearly sweet, but it's not super sweet kind of thing, right? And the way the fragrance seems to ride that wave, that metallic saw going back and forth, that wavery, watery, almost sound in the air, right? That's how it comes at you early on. And you get what I would consider to be, in my opinion, a very well done niche fragrance for the modern age, you know? That's kind of my inclination as to how I would categorize this, but with a huge asterisk, okay? That asterisk is twofold. So first, there are times I smell this and I think, I really like this, okay? That's my very first inclination with the scent, is I like it. I like the brand so far, I like what I've smelled, but it's done in this very modern day way that is really at odds with the stuff I really, really love to wear. Like when I wear stuff like this, or I mentioned Givenchy Gentleman, it's like pure and unadulterated love through and through. Every single second I wear it, I'm like, I am wearing something amazing. I don't get that sort of love with this, but I like it. You know, my inclination is to say that I really like this. And one of the things that I think I've come to enjoy about Eau Coeur over the last couple days is that the florals here are used pretty brilliantly, okay? There is a bit of like a sleight of hand done by the perfumer, Mr. Bachmann, in my opinion. And even though there are no citrus notes used, I guess I should have told you the note listing, but it's magnolia oil, osmanthus absolute, pink pepper, rose maroc absolute, Virginia cedarwood, oak wood, tonka bean absolute, musk, and ambroxan. That's what they officially say. Now, there are some other sites that list some other things not listed. Saffron is a note listed on Lucky Scent that is not listed here, okay? So they actually list saffron, which I could totally see, you know? But one of the brilliant parts to me is the perfumer uses a little bit of, like, as I said, a sleight of hand, okay? Like one hand's behind the back and one hand is showing you what you want to see, and the hand behind the back has something that you're going to smell pretty soon. And what ends up happening is there's no citrus notes listed, you notice. They just jumps right into the floral kind of open airiness that I was mentioning, the freshness of the florals. Almost make it seem like there is like a slight sprinkle or, you know, twist of bergamot or lemon or something like that being squeezed out of the flowers, right? So while you're smelling the flowers, it almost feels like there's some citrusy notes being pushed out of the flowers. And there's a specific flower that does that, and that's magnolia. Magnolia can sometimes have this sort of like citrusy top note smell when you first smell it, along with the white floral and all that other stuff that you really get. And it's a very underused floral, in my opinion. I love the way Dmitry Bortnikov uses magnolia. He's one of the few perfumers who I think has really unlocked the beauty of magnolia. And it's actually a flower, interestingly enough, that goes back to prehistoric times. So I didn't realize this until I did some research on it one day, but you can imagine like dinosaurs eating those giant magnolia, those beautiful big giant white magnolia flowers that grow off of the tree. And they bloom really big in full bloom. But here it's used brilliantly, in my opinion, to add this fluffy, airy, it's like a smooth, creamy, like floral combination that just seems to give the fragrance this amazing amount of space, you know? For as dense and tightly wound as raw gold was, and thick and heavy, you know, like a weight. In Eau Coeur, it's the exact opposite. It's like, it's literally like riding on the wave, like riding on an invisible wave in the air that you can't see. And it adds this unbelievable, fluffy, airy sort of combination. Remember when I was a kid, they used to have overhead projectors. I'm probably dating myself. The kids nowadays are probably like, what the hell is an overhead projector? You would put the overhead projector on, put that little laminated sheet of paper and it would pop up on the wall. And as I said, I'm probably dating myself, but imagine that laminated sheet, you know, that transparent layer. Eau Coeur has this almost like transparent layer standing between Eau Coeur and yourself while you're smelling the fragrance. So it's so interesting though, because Eau Coeur as a name also translates to water of the heart. Okay, water of the heart. But this is not an aquatic fragrance, as I've said many a times. It's not an aquatic. I don't want you to think of an aquatic fragrance. But it does have this sort of wavery up and down of the sea. And imagine the transparent nature of water, you know? A lot of times you can see through water if you're lucky and you don't live in a dump and water comes out of the tap properly. But again, not an aquatic, but it has this transparent nature, you know? You can see through water, but it maybe distorts what's on the other side. The way that the florals are used here add a little bit of that. And if you can imagine that wah, wah, wah of the sort of saw going back and forth, that's how it comes to you in the opening. And then you add in probably one of my favorite floral notes, which is osmanthus. I love osmanthus. I'm a huge osmanthus fan, so take what I'm going to say about the fragrance with a grain of salt. It's probably the osmanthus that I absolutely love, but it adds this sort of peachy, floral, leather, popcorn-like thing. And osmanthus, some say can have this balloon-like aspect to it. They can say it also gets slightly animalic. The brand, I don't know if you caught that as I was reading it, but they said that it is a feral leather fragrance. That comes probably from the osmanthus. Osmanthus can have this more suede-like to my nose than pure out-and-out leather, but, you know, there is a slight animalic undertone depending on how the osmanthus is used. I don't know if I would go that far and say that this is a feral animalic, no, but there are some little undertone touches, and the osmanthus is what gives it that. And what they've done is they've combined that sort of fuzzy osmanthus floral smell with the sort of peachy, suedey, leathery undertone that it gives off with this beautiful sort of heart of wood. So imagine this woody nature that the fragrance turns into. So you have floral, and then you have woody as it combines later on with oak wood and Virginia cedar. And where they made it modern is the base. And the base seems to have an absolute metric ton of modern musks, a lot of them. And they absolutely back the truck up on ambroxan. Now, this is the juxtaposition of things where some people could get lost in this, because I can appreciate some amber woods and some ambroxan fragrances and stuff like that where just some people can't. I mean, some people, they smell it and they're like, nope, I'm gone. Not me at all. And I can understand, you know, for a niche brand trying to compete in the sea of 6,000 new fragrances, they made it very modern smelling. My guess is that the average person who is not really into perfume would smell this and like it a lot. Okay, that's the way that I would perceive this fragrance. My guess is also that there are some people in Fragcom that would smell it and just write it off, right? Nope, not for me. I spent some time with it, and I think that it does both. So, you know, it has this very thin feeling. As I mentioned, the florals and the way it comes to you feels very airy and like the fragrance is thin. Think of that transparent sort of sheet that I was mentioning between you and the fragrance. And ambroxan gives the fragrance this huge amount of throw, right? So many times, even with this little roll-on dabber, forget actually spraying, I do these testings at night. So what I'll do is I'll wear an actual scent of the day, because I don't want to wear this as my scent of the day. So I will do an actual wearing, something I really want to wear as my scent of the day, and then I'll test this at night. Many times when I woke up in the next morning, I could still smell this, which is pretty impressive for a floral, you know, light, airy type fragrance, right? So it has that modern sort of, I don't know if I would say this fills the room, but it has this modern ambroxan throw, as I would say. And it also has these very slight ambery undertones that start to come together. So the one I just did 20 minutes ago or whatever, 25 minutes ago, I'm not getting as much amber yet, but here, the 3 plus 3.5 hour dry down, you know, you start to get some of that amberiness mixing in with the musk a little. And it's probably that mixture of that coumarin, tonka bean absolute thing, and maybe that little bit of saffron, you know, adding a little bit of that. And that ambroxan, and what ends up happening is as the fragrance continues to dry, the florals start to feel a little bit waxy, as if like you wrote on that transparent sheet I was telling you about from the overhead, and then you sprayed some water on it. Remember those water bottles they used to put on there, spray it and wipe it off, and then you could write again. It would project up on the board. Imagine like the florals were what was actually on that transparent sheet of paper, and when the water hit, they kind of ran down and turned into this like waxy like feeling, almost like wax paper, you know? That's kind of what the florals start to turn into. So you can see, I like the fragrance because it gives me a lot to smell. There's a lot to break down. There's a lot to go through. And the brand is obviously obsessed with this gold marketing. They named their first fragrance Raw Gold. They've got this gold lettering and all that stuff. Even their brand logo is written in gold. And so they're obviously sort of obsessed with gold for whatever reason. But you can see the fragrance sort of has very high quality materials for a niche house in this category, if you will. And it gives you a lot to smell, even for someone like, even on a fragrance category that most people usually write off as boring or whatever it is, I found a lot to smell and like. And yes, the sweetness bothers me a little bit. In a perfect world, I would tone that down, but I know that 99% of the people probably don't want that. Folks like us are probably the anomaly, you know? So they're marketing to a group of people that probably would like that sweetness. And as I said, somebody who's newer to the brand, if this is the first thing they smell, I bet you they would like it. I bet this would be an easy everyday wear in Texas 9 months out of the year when it's not going to snow the next day. You know, the one time every year or two it snows. And I'm reviewing a fragrance that's probably perfect for all the other times where it's not snowing. But anyways, if you guys have any experience with Eau Coeur, Water of the Heart, I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you, Matt, for sending this my way. He also sent me a bunch of other stuff. It's impossible to get through all of the samples and bottles and everything that I want to talk with you guys about. So, you know, I'll do my best. You know, I'll be cooped up probably for the next few days if it does snow and ice and all that stuff. So I'll have some time to maybe pump out some more videos, but I love doing these. It's just a matter of time. I mean, what's crazy is even if you had like an assistant, you know, somebody who could help you categorize everything and get working on the basics and stuff like that. Even if you doubled it and said, okay, you're going to do 2 reviews a day, you're hardly making a dent into the 6,000 plus fragrances put out every single year. So I'm going to have to really, I think, reimagine how I prioritize what I'm going to talk about on the channel, because lately, you know, I almost feel like I'm swimming upstream. You know, it's so impossible to keep up that some days I just want to like throw up my hands and be like, screw it, you know? I just don't feel like doing anything today because my one review is just not going to make a difference because there's just so much to talk about. And the modern consumerism, they're going to keep pumping stuff out. It's not going to end. The markups on these fragrances are definitely worth it for the companies to continue. And, you know, that's just the way it's going to be for the time being. You know, until people start voting with their dollars and stop paying the prices, this is what we're going to be getting. So, you know, I do think that the price is high, but I also understand with modern niche market, less than $300 for 50 mils of an X-ray. I hate to say it, but, you know, the fragrance I reviewed yesterday was $425 for 30 mils. So, I mean, it's just, it is what it is. You know, it's just one of those things. But anyways, as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for spending some time with me this evening. Love you guys. Cheers. Catch you next time. Bye-bye.